The agenda for today, going to start off with a short introduction, followed by which business processes for today's webinar are in scope. Then we'd all love to hear something about how we solve complex billing challenges in practice. Then I'm going to explain something about the end billing solution. We have a reference architecture that, well, helps you to solve your business needs, some practical customer case studies, and I hope we have many questions today, so we can do a deep dive into details in the questions and answers. So please feel free to raise your questions during the QA, and I will be happy to answer them. So let's start off with a short introduction. My name is Kevin van Blokland. I live in the Netherlands, and my background is in computing science, or you can say operations research consultancy background. This might sound kind of vague, but it all comes down to using information technology to optimize your business process, your operation processes. And it's all coming down to simulation modeling and applying mathematics for creating complex algorithms. Well, that's a lot of blah, blah, blah stuff, but in the end, there are so many optimization opportunities to find in every company, actually. And it's always fascinating to me to, as a consultant, come to a new company and find new complexities arise and sitting together with the customer and solve those complexities. So I'm an billing consultant for about 4 years, and I have two roles actually. That is, well, one of them is just being the consultant and implementing and billing with customers, but also adding innovation to the billing product. So finding out where we need new technical details implemented, or supporting new processes, or incorporating other products in your day-to-day billing process. So whenever I go to customers, I always found that two processes are already very good implemented, actually. That's the record to report process, which is just your financial administration, your general ledger, reporting, the financial bookkeeping, actually, together with a periodic reporting process to measure the business performance, etc. It's really the quantification of the business. And also the purchase to pay process, which is, well, actually the procurement process, because most companies have very strict regulations on how to apply them. There might be even governmental rules here in play. But what sometimes and most of the times can be improved is actually the order to cash process. And this is actually your core business process. And well, why can this be improved? Because I'm really convinced that this is an ever improving process. I mean, business regulations change, new businesses being developed, governmental rules apply. For instance, during the COVID pandemic in Germany, there was a tax relief program, which meant that, well, the standard order to cash process needs to be adapted for different tax calculations. So this is actually an area that can be improved over time and over time. So the challenges we see today are really to manage the working capital and cash flow. Businesses grow and develop, so it becomes harder and harder to guarantee that completeness of revenue. Think of the amount of transactions that increase at a large scale. And with that amount of data coming into your system and in your business process, it sometimes becomes very hard to efficiently and foremost correctly generate your invoices. So these are challenges that play a role in today's businesses. Now, having a computing science background, I always like to apply science topics to the business process. And one of the topics that speaks most for me is the definition of big data. So if we have the science definition of big data, actually is comprised of the 3 V's: velocity, volume, and variety. So when we talk about velocity, this is actually the timing issues that play a role in your day-to-day business, the speed of data coming into your system. As sales increase, you might find yourself that the transactions are coming in so quickly that you need to do something about your optimization processes. It's also about volume. There are more transactions. There is more data to be processed. How do we guarantee that the data is complete? And there's also variety. Sometimes businesses grow. They go cross-border, Europe-wide, worldwide. That means that there can be a large variety of data coming into your system. Even if you develop new business areas, it might be new products, new kinds of services, a whole kind of business model transformation. These are really the three topics that we need to think about when solving big data problems. And in my opinion, if we can solve the big data problem and apply that to your billing process, then we can also solve your challenges in your billing processes. So let's try to figure out some of those topics. When I talk about Felicity, this is really about applying process automation. We may think about the automatic handling of invoices, the automatic generation. What we often see is that some kind of businesses need headless integration, which actually means that there is no day-to-day work involved, no people pressing buttons to continue your billing process. And it all comes down to a seamless integration, because if you miss your data here because of the velocity, you might miss revenue on this case. Well, when we talk about volume, let's think about consolidation of invoice lines. Maybe your business process has many microtransactions or has very complex business rules where other kinds of documents are required in order to continue your invoicing process. With a large volume, there's also the challenge of data consistency. It's not possible anymore for a single person to have a total overview of your billing ingredients actually, and it becomes really helpful to generate insights on your big data volume problem. And as the volume increases, sure, it might be repetitious works which can introduce errors. So this is an area where we need to support the people working in the billing process to minimize those errors. Well, when we look at variety, think on product types, different kinds of pricing methods that may vary over time. So that could introduce multiple billing types. And all those billing types could come into play at the same moment. So it's really the business rules playing a role here in order to support that variety. But there's more variety to find here. If we compare it, for instance, to a financials unit for financials installation, we have multi-company, multi-currency, multi-tax. Well, there's actually multi everywhere. So this is also a big area to cover during a project. So what can mBilling do for you? Well, this is actually a repetition of the previous slides, but sure, we can improve your working capital and cash flow, guarantee the completeness of the revenue. Because we have so many business rules that can take place, we can make sure that we cover every topic here. And that in the end leads to correct invoices being generated in an efficient way. And at the end, well, it's all about delivering a solid return on investment. But let's go a step deeper here and find out how we solve complex billing challenges in practice. Well, whenever I have a goal or whenever I have a project, my goal is really to structuralize the billing process. And with the mBilling software, that's exactly what we do. First, we need to make sure that this billing process is understood by all the people involved within the project. I'll come back to that later. And then at some point, we have to decide where we have to apply innovations. I really don't believe in standard software anymore because there is no single standard here. Every company has its own business process which needs to be supported. So there's always deviations that need to be applied. And really the power of the M-billing solution is that we incorporate areas where we can deviate to those innovations. But don't forget that it's also about consultancy. It's about working together, making sure we're on the same page. And that comes with the best practices that we find within different companies and that we can copy over to new customers. And I'm only happy until we achieve the following three topics. That is data consistency and completeness. I don't sleep well when I'm aware of the fact that we're not consistent or complete with the data. We're missing some revenue here. It's just not correct. Since it's becoming more and more IT, there's more information and there's also more technology that takes place. I'd like to achieve full automation where possible. But let's don't forget that with full automation, you might lose oversight of your billing process. And sometimes this delivers problems within the organization because people get lost, they don't understand the process anymore. So it's very important to also introduce the control where needed. We need to have some building blocks for people to make sure that every checkbox is checked, making sure that we're complete. Well, sometimes this can be done by delivering the right reports to the end user. But sometimes we really need to introduce control blocks in other systems to support the process. I'll come back to that one later. So then what is a successful project? What requires a successful project? It's really the understanding of the business process. And actually, that's why I like being a consultant so much. With every company, there's a different process. There's new challenges that we meet. And it's always new. So I always learn something new about the organization. But it's really mandatory that we all have the same understanding of the process. With that understanding, it's really necessary to have knowledge accessible. That means bringing the right people to the table during a project. And since more and more technical systems are involved in complex billing projects, we also need technical resources. So that means that I can see that there are people waiting in the lobby, so maybe it's good to have them enter this meeting. That means that we need to bring multiple parties to the table, but also people with the right background. Let's start with the business. Now, I quote business here because this can be a very vague term. It really is about bringing the people to the table that have deep knowledge on what the company actually does. And sometimes it's not, well, how do you say that? I'm a Dutch speaker, so no native English here. But it's really fascinating that people from other departments have more knowledge than others where you might suspect that the knowledge is there. Well, it's billing, so we definitely need finance, especially when we have very complex tax regulations taking place. But as there are more technical systems involved in the complex billing nowadays, yeah, sure, we need IT. And sometimes IT is forgotten within a project. And then at the moment that we need technical resources here, yeah, you run into a problem here. So what I see is that most of the time there is IT involved within projects. But of course, we also need the internal and external consultants. But let's not forget that most of the time, your business process is not only run by internal processes and projects, it might also be partner products and processes that we need to rely upon. So bringing those partners to the table might be a good idea. What it all comes down to in the end is bringing order to the chaos, and that's from a high level perspective, of course. It's really mandatory to have that end-to-end happy flow working. That means that if we have a full understanding of roughly, let's say, 80% of your business process, this could lead to a good project. We have an end-to-end happy flow. We know what the business is about, and we can start mapping the M-billing framework to the business process. And what I mean with mapping the M-billing framework to the business process is not that, well, you buy M-billing and use M-billing together with financials and your complex billing automatically works. No, there's still work to be done, such as the variations that need to be scoped. What kind of currencies are involved? Do we have complex tax regulations? What about the bookkeeping and the account codes we need? This is really the integration with your financial system. Sometimes we have very complex invoice templates that need appendices with supporting information. For instance, if you're in the shipping business, a proof of delivery might sometimes be required. And well, there might be multiple business rules taking place in those projects. So it's really mandatory to have those scoped in the project on a good detailed level. Sometimes you don't really necessarily go to that deepest level, but it's good to know them beforehand before really integrating the M-billing product in your M-billing process or in your complex billing process. And then bottom line, it might be that there might be some missing links, and that's actually the area where we introduce integrations. And I'll come back to that one later. But this is really the mindset of the M-billing framework. We don't try to enforce you to go into a very specific process. No, we try to give you the right amount of building blocks to make sure that your billing process is really complete. So let's talk about the M-billing solution. What is the M-billing solution? So as I said, it's actually a framework that we map on your billing process. And we're bringing order to the chaos. So let's separate that process into three different areas. That is collect, process, and deliver. Well, with data collection, it actually goes for itself, but sometimes that data collection is not so straightforward. So that is where we need integration. Then when we have all data in the system and all data at hand, it needs to be processed. And this is the area where we apply aggregation, consolidation, making sure that your business rules are in place, applying complex pricing algorithms. There might be a very sophisticated approval framework, and sometimes even here, a separate integration is required. And then finally, when we have all documents created, we need to be publishing those invoices. This could mean that we just generate a PDF with the information, and you send out that PDF by hand just by typing an email to your debtor. But this could also mean that there's a fully automated process that delivers those emails to your customers, that there's finalization as a journal entry in financials. It might be that we have sophisticated reporting on your business process, supported by the billing process. And even here, sometimes integrations are really necessary to deliver that 100% integration with your process. So let's talk about the first phase, collecting the information. What we see is that there's always, well, almost always a financials component taking place here, because financials record your debtor information. Think about the addresses and account codes. This is a very important source of information. It might be that you have a Salesforce integration within your process. There's no problem integrating with Salesforce here. And most of the times, when we really go for the full 100% automation, we have to integrate with the own line of business applications. Think about document management systems that should deliver the proof of deliveries and the supporting information. Or it might be that custom web services are needed if we really go technical. Sometimes manual uploads are required, but we try to be fully automated here to minimize the errors. And with all those technical requirements, Yeah, most of the times we also need to consult with the internal IT department to make sure that we got everything correct. When it comes to processing, we have to apply pricing algorithms. Well, this is actually the area where most of your business rules take place. Later upon in this presentation, I will show you how we form invoices. But there are so many ingredients taking place here. This is actually the core of the billing solution. Think about validation rules, approval review process, separation of invoice streams. It might be really obvious that there's only a single stream, but most of the times what you see, ingredients are coming from multiple sources and need to be processed in their own invoice stream at several different moments here. So this is really where the knowledge of your business process takes place. And then finally, for that full integration experience, we need to deliver those important pieces of information to your end customer, to your finance installation, to your document management services. This can be done through email, but also API integrations, for example. What we see more and more is that there's almost no a barrier between the document and the document being delivered with the end customer, because there are so many integrations taking place here. And that means that integrating with the line of business application is really an important aspect in this case. And new and really upcoming, but enforced by several governments, is PEPL integration, because some governments, they expect all invoices to be delivered through PEPL. And I'm really interested to learn if one of those attendees today are in fact using PEPL or foresee PEPL being used in the near future. So please raise a question about that one if you'd love to share some information about that. So if we look at the billing solution, it really comes down to this picture. We have sources coming in from the left, heterogeneous sources, all kinds of sources you can think of. And then we have several modules within the billing solution that deliver the business rules and the automatic processing. That is the data bridge where actually all information is collected, so that we make sure that we have all ingredients at hand to create those invoices. There is a rules engine where customized data can be entered, manual data and processes take place, and complex business rules take place. Then we have the core billing module, which delivers the final PDF documents and making sure that the amounts add up. We have the correct tax calculations, etc. And then in the end, we have the correspondent that is responsible for delivering the invoice documents and the financials records to the upstream systems. And then within this whole process, we have integration taking place where needed. So let's talk about the architecture to suit your business needs. Within the billing solution, we only have one assumption. And that assumption is that within the process that is displayed on this slide, we can model your billing process, which actually comes down to the following steps. It's collecting, generating, checking, approving, printing, and finally journalizing your billing information, actually. And it's important to know that we don't force you to use all those steps, but it is possible to introduce those steps. And that whenever one of those steps could require sufficient processing, that's all possible. With that assumption, we can't create everything. We need more building blocks, actually. And those building blocks I would like to talk about, because they actually deliver the full 100% integration that we need so desperately. First one I'd like to talk about is authentication and security. Now, this is not really a business requirement, but if you have someone from IT at the table, they really appreciate that this topic is being covered, and just making sure that it's covered in a good way. In the last couple of years, we've invested some time in improving the authentication and security, and foremost, the integration with Unit 4 Financials. As Unit 4 Financials is also moving more to the cloud, that authentication mechanism becomes more and more important. And what we are actually trying to achieve here is that we have a single sign-on experience together with Unit 4 Financials and the billing solution by leveraging the OpenID technology. Now, OpenID technology, it might not say much to you, but this is really the technology that large software vendors such as Google, Microsoft, Salesforce, well, the images are there on the slide, are really investing in. And with the OpenID technology, we make sure that within our own product, we don't record passwords and other kinds of information that we actually don't need. We rely upon those parties to deliver that sign-in experience, such that you have the full experience of an integrated system without having security breaches, actually. So this part is really covered and works really well with Unit 4 Financials and even with Unit 4 Financials single sign-on within the cloud. So having this one covered, let's go to the SaaS solution. We know that the Unit 4 is really moving to the cloud. For billing, it doesn't really matter where the solution is hosted. Sometimes we have specific business requirements and regulations actually that force us to be within your own system. But it might also be possible that you have billing from the cloud. And the billing solution actually is a hosted and supported solution by Unit 4. That means that we've been to several processes together with Unit 4, and that we are a compliant SaaS vendor together with Unit 4 Financials. Even if we have billing and financials within the cloud, sometimes a secure dedicated connection is required. Well, that's all possible with your on-premise company network to make sure that company data never goes to the public internet. Well, interfacing, it's actually an interesting topic for me because there's lots of technology taking place here. But it's also very important to make sure that we have all ingredients within the system. And let's start with the CSV import. Whenever I see CSV import, I think there are more optimizations opportunities possible. But sometimes, well, let's face it, it's just the way it is, and we need CSV import. So it's always good to know that custom CSV is supported, and with custom CSV, you can almost support 100% of your processes. But in the end, the real optimization comes from integrating the billing solution with your own internal processes. That means that other systems can deliver the invoice ingredients to the billing solution. This is what we refer to as API, or let's say differently, a push integration. Or that the billing solution itself is responsible for collecting the data in other systems, which is the API pool system here. Whenever we face a large volume of data, we always try to integrate directly with databases of other systems, so that with the database integrations, you make sure that your volumes are processed in the correct way and that we're all complete. And finally, we never try to do manual labor or introduce manual labor in a new process. And that means that sometimes we need a tool called a task runner to automate several of these processes in a timely manner. Let's talk about pricing and algorithms. So most of the time when we start a project, first thing we talk about is, well, we have debtors, we have information, and we have invoices. But I always say, okay, let's take a break. We have to go one level deeper. What are invoices? How do we record debtors? How are invoices built? And what we try to do is go deeper and deeper and deeper until we're at the level that that we can say, well, these ingredients, those are the ingredients that we start with. And I explicitly call them ingredients because if I put another business term here, for some customers it might mean something, but for the others they might say, well, I don't recognize my business in these terms. So it really comes down to collecting the right ingredients. For example, if you're a package delivery company, the ingredients could be the event that a package or a parcel is delivered to the end address. It could also mean that, for example, a healthcare service is delivered to a healthcare client. You can think of all kinds of ingredients. It's not only products that's being sold, it's also services being delivered to your end customer. Next step, if we have all those ingredients complete, we still don't have the invoices. So let's start with generating invoice line. Most of the times, when we're really at that deep level, it's one-to-one, meaning that one ingredient leads to one invoice. But there might be complex calculations taking place. So it might be that those ingredients should be combined together. There's a calculation taking place, forming only a single invoice line, having three ingredients being applied together. Finally, when we have those invoice lines, we're still not at that invoice level because there's aggregation taking place. Sometimes one invoice line leads to one invoice, but most of the time we aggregate and consolidate invoice lines to a separate stream of invoices. Sometimes invoices are only erased when all invoice lines of a full month are collected. Sometimes services are just rendered one-to-one to invoice documents. And this is actually where the pricing algorithms take place to make sure that the ingredient and the invoice lines amount to the correct numbers here. And then finally, if we have all those business rules in place to determine what kind of ingredients lead to what kind of invoice lines and invoice documents, we have the final invoice documents that can be printed and recorded in your financial system. So this is actually the area we turn the technology upside down and start really at the bottom with the ingredients instead of, well, what makes up an invoice. Then let's talk about some integrations. As I said, the billing solution is really a framework that helps you model your complex billing process. And being a framework, it also means that we open up for several kinds of integrations. We do not try to force you within a specific framework. No, we try to open up the framework so we have possibilities to place those integrations at key stages taking place in your process. For instance, if you're billing to your end customers directly, it might be helpful to generate a payment link on the invoice document, such that the payment can be collected right away. This is one of those integrations. We have Molly, Adyen, Stripe integrations, but if there are more payment providers, we can add them to the solution. Another example here is when journalization should take place. The standard within the software is that we record the transaction in financials, but it could also require us to deliver a XML document on the Peppol network so that we have invoices to governments or intergovernment invoices or invoices to other countries. And sometimes the business really has a sophisticated automated process, and in that case, we integrate with their own line of business application. And what you see on the right side here is a graphic that explains that within each of those steps, it's really possible to integrate custom logic by really programming a small kind of business logic, but to integrate with all kinds of systems. And then there's also the possibility to extend processes. And lately, I've had an opportunity to step out of the approval process within the billing solution and really deliver a sophisticated solution by making sure that the approval process of the invoices takes place in Unit 4 Financials. Sometimes we need proof of deliveries or invitation to invoice as supporting documentation for the invoices. That's when we reach out to the own line of business integration. And we also have customers that really like to be in self-control and are really future ready. And for those customers, we integrate low-code integration, which means that in each of those steps, it's possible to use a low-code platform called Lemmonforce to click together your process, make changes in that process, such that it integrates with your own system in the way you really need it to. So that means that whenever sophisticated solutions are required, it is possible to apply those in all steps within the system. And one of those building blocks is also intercompany. And this actually reflects the company setup in financials most of the time, but we could deviate from this. And there's more variation to this one. It starts out with one-to-one invoicing, meaning that one single invoice is only booked to a single company. But it could also be that one invoice leads to multiple financial records to multiple companies, such as if we model the full debit and credit flow, thinking about buyers and sellers, then we have one document, but that supports two financial transactions to maybe multiple companies. What we often see is intercompany bookings to making sure that the revenue is collected in the right company. Pass-through invoices, where one company collects the services but should be paid out to the other. And of course, transfer pricing taking place here with tax calculations and business optimizations. All is possible within the billing framework. And finally, we have reference implementations for business to consumers and business to business portals. And one of those examples here is unfortunately in Dutch. But this is the invoice portal where end customers are able to print out the invoice documents and see a list of their previous invoices. And how this works is that you either get a mail by the system saying that please click this link to go to the invoice portal and see your invoice, or they could directly navigate to this one. They enter the email address, they receive a two-factor authentication as a verification that this really is the debtor we're talking about. And having provided that security code, they're able to access a specific document here, where they're able to download the invoice PDF. There can be several details printed out on the website, and even previous invoices can be shown here. Now, these are some of the building blocks that we have in the system. Let's talk about some practical customer case studies here. And we start with FSMA. FSMA stands for the Financial Services and Markets Authority and is a governmental organization in Belgium. And what this organization is responsible for is whenever I have a business that is active on the financial services or the financial market, meaning that I have mortgages, insurances, stuff like that. This authority needs to record your information, and that you actually need a license to operate. What this means is that all commercial business applications go through FSMA. And it also means that the initial registration and the license approval, it all takes place within the organization. And the billing solution here really supports that process. And with every license that is approved by FSMA, there's a record in billing stating that this license is approved and there's supporting information. And since this is a government authority and it's all about financial services, it really needs high fidelity. So some of the highlights is that we have a full integration with their license registry back office. There are actually physical meetings taking place where applicants are discussed, and there's going to be a signature somewhere on a document. That document automatically, in the end, ends up in the billing solution. Another one of those highlights is that the billing solution is responsible for delivering the invoices directly to the debtors. And a very important one is that we have very sophisticated algorithms here for the pricing of the contributions. And this is actually stated by law and stated per sector. So this is really a government requirement here. And the billing solution, it all solves this problem. And fun fact here is that it not only delivers financial records such as invoices, it could also mean that if you terminate your license here, there's going to be a mail with a PDF document with a signature below it stating that your license is terminated. The billing solution, because it's integrated with a license registry back-office application, it also delivers you that document. So it's responsible for creating those documents as well. This is really the correspondence module taking place here. Another one which should be familiar for most of you is Yodel, the delivery company here. And well, key aspects here, yeah, well, sure, high volumes of transactions, but that's not the only specific fun fact about this one. It's not only parcel delivery, which is the debtors, it's also driver payments. So that means that we do not only create debit invoices, but also credit invoices. It's the end customers paying for their package being delivered, but it's also the drivers being paid out by Yodel for the fact that they deliver packages to the end customers. One of the highlights here is that we have real optimizations taking place, which is really a cooperation with the IT team here, because there is such a large volume of packages. For instance, on Black Friday, where we have more than 1.5 million parcels being processed by the system, you really need a good cooperation with IT. And it might not be that obvious, but there's a very sophisticated pricing algorithm taking place here, because sometimes you have collection of parcels. Sometimes parcels are priced by their weight or their dimensions or their zip code region. There's really a sophisticated pricing algorithm with a high variety implemented in billing in this case. Another one we have here is GVL, which stands for Gesellschaft zur Verwertung von Leistungsschutzrechten. I always like to say that one. And this actually stands for the Society for the Exploitation of Performing Rights. GVL is responsible for collecting money from broadcasting stations or Spotify or YouTube or live events, for example, and making sure that the performing artists are being paid out. And this also leads to a billing solution where it's not only debit invoices, but also credit invoices, because payouts take place in this solution. The highlights here are that we have a high volume with a lot of aggregation and preserved history within the system. And that actually is introduced by the Differenzermittlung, taking place each month. And that means that if we have the broadcasting stations, for example, playing the music, that information is actually being collected in Germany. And that information is also released over time. And it could mean that 6 months later, we still receive information about license rights of music or other artists that took place some time ago that still need to be paid out to the performing artist. And it means that this is really an ongoing process where the preserved history is required to make sure that in the end, all that money is being paid out to the correct party. And talking about the correct party, there's really complex business rules taking place here, because it might be very obvious that that one song is related to only one performing artist. But what about groups where we have multiple performing artists? Sometimes performing artists have other companies that are representative for their licenses and manage their licenses. What about former artists that unfortunately passed away? Their heirs, they also need to receive that money. And this is really the core business of GVL, to have this being recorded in a correct way and making sure that that money is collected and delivered to the right person. Then we have Hoyer, a smart logistics company professionalized in liquid, and they transport containers. And with container transport, there's a large variety. Not only a variety in the products that are being moved on the road or intermodal by train, by boat. It's also a variety in the workflows that are possible within the M-billing solution. Key highlight for this M-billing integration is that Hoyer has many companies all over the world, but each company might deviate with their workflow process. And all those deviations, they are all within the M-billing system. So we really support it. But also there's multiple currencies taking place. So we have currency translations. We have cost allocations, but also a large variety in ingredients. It's not only moving the containers from A to B. We have empty legs, that is, if a truck drives without a container. But also think about the cleaning costs introduced with all those containers. And since this is a global operation with multiple companies, we have a very large amount of intercompany bookings here. Next one, also impressive one, is called Drukwerkdeal. This is Dutch, but actually this is a daughter company of Simpress, which I believe is originated in Ireland. And you might also know them as Vistaprint or Printdeal. And the Drukwerkdeal branch operates in the Netherlands and Belgium and Germany, if I'm not mistaken. And what this is a high volume web print shop. And what they do is they do not only print your business cards, they also print balloons, banners, tea mugs, everything you can think about. And what really key is for their business is that it's fully automated from its design to its delivery. So it really starts with their web shop portal where you place your order, everything being collected automatically, everything being processed with the internal printer systems. Shop orders are being printed out automatically. And then at some point, well, the end customer needs to be billed. And here we have a full integration, which is actually headless. And that means that we require no user interaction for the day-to-day business. We do deliver reporting opportunities and manual interactions, but that's only to correct certain orders. Their day-to-day process is for more than 99% fully automated. And you can only achieve that full automation if you have a full integration with your own line of business application. And well, yeah, as this is a online print shop, they have a 24/7 business, and that means that the M-billing solution will always be up and running, producing those invoices. Finally, I would like to talk about Garante Group, which is actually an alliance of healthcare providers. So it's not a single company. This is really a group of multiple healthcare providers working together to optimize, well, actually all their processes. It's not only the billing process, but it's all the processes that are comprised within the healthcare business. And interesting here is that all those organizations are within the same system, but they are separated. And that means that if I'm from organization A, I'm not able to see transactions from organization B. You could think that if we put all those organizations in one single system, that we have forced one single process on all those organizations. But that's not the case. within the billing solution, we actually allow different products to be entered, different kind of debtors, individual agreements per healthcare client, per provider. There's really a large variety in products, and everything is possible within the billing solution on this topic. And also key with this solution is that we support the invoices with details and receipts, because sometimes this is just required by the insurance company. And since it's one system, there's only one back office that's needed to support multiple organizations. And that means that all organizations are trained to use the same system, and that there's really optimization, not only within the billing process, but also on organization level taking place here. And of course, there's integrations with the electronic client files, because we need debtor information. We need to make sure and check what the methods of billing are. Sometimes it's on account, sometimes it's direct debit, or they could even deviate per product or process being billed. So this is really an interesting one with a lot of optimizations here. And yeah, I believe that's the last slide here. So let's go to the Q&A.